What's going on, AFC? I hope you guys had a good week. Last week, you guys heard from Krista. She killed it. And so I have the opportunity to follow her up after she ended chapter 3. And so we are going to start with the first part of chapter 4. And really what it is it's kind of an in thought, something else thrown in there, something else put into the end of chapter 3 that Krista was talking about last time, and it really ends with the last verse in chapter 3, and that's 29, and it says, "And if you are Christ's, then you're Abraham's offspring, heirs according to a promise." So long ago, God promised Abraham that the nations would be blessed through him. And so it's kind of been this mystery as to how all these people will be blessed, and then an offspring comes, Christ, through Abraham's line that comes and makes this way for us to be heirs, to be adopted as sons, and that's what the first part of chapter 4 is talking about. So I just want to read the first part that we're going to do. We're going to do verses 1 through 7, and then I want to kind of key in on some things in verses 6 and 7. So that's what we're going to do today. Verse 1. "I mean that the heir, as long as he is a child, is no different from a slave, though he is the owner of everything, but he is under guardians and managers until the date set by his father." And so the first thing we need to talk about is this, is a child really a slave? Well, back then, yeah, the child of the landowner was pretty much like the slave. He did not have the inheritance yet. He was a hired person under the owner of the estate or whoever that was. And so a lot of it, before you were given the inheritance, you were pretty much a slave. You were the equivalent of. So verse 3, "In the same way also, when we were children, were enslaved to the elementary principles of the world. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so we might receive adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God has set the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, 'Abba, Father.' So you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God." And first thing I want to talk about is in verse 6, where he says, "And because you are sons, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into your hearts." Within Christians, there's kind of a misconception as to what you get when you get heaven. Here's what I mean. So if I were to ask you the question, why is heaven heaven? Or why do you want to go to heaven? A lot of the answers that you would get from Christians today is, I want to go because my family's going to be there. I want to go because it's got golden streets. I want to go because it's a happy place. And those are answers, but the answer is within this verse, within verse 6, it's heaven is heaven. Not because any of those things, but because God is there. That's why heaven is an amazing place, not because it has golden streets, but because God is there. And so it answers this question. Because you're sons, you get the Spirit. It doesn't say, and because you're sons, God will let you into heaven. It says, because you're sons, God sent the Spirit into you. And he's crying, Abba, he's crying, Father. He's crying out for you, and that leads into the verse 7. So you're no longer a slave, but a son. And this kind of culminates Paul's point here. And so the first thing I want to talk about in verse 7 is that you are a son. I am a son. I am my father's son by nothing that I did. Okay, does that make sense? So you are a son or a daughter to your parents, not by an accomplishment that you have. Simply by virtue of birth. In the same way, you did nothing to become a son or heir to this kingdom. You are a son or heir because you're a son because of what Christ did, not because of what you did, not because of your virtue, not because of your accomplishments. You are an heir, you are a son, you are a daughter because of Christ and Christ alone. And the last thing that I want to talk about here is, it's actually a quote from Martin Luther, and it's talking about the verse 7, and this is what it says. It says, "We are not heirs of some rich and mighty man, but heirs of God, the almighty creator of all things. If a person could fully appreciate what it means to be a son and heir of God, he would rate the might and wealth of nations small change in comparison with his heavenly inheritance. What is the world to him who has heaven?" No wonder Paul greatly desired to depart and to be with Christ. Nothing would be more welcome to us than early death, knowing that it would spell the end of all our miseries and the beginning of our happiness. Yes, if a person could perfectly believe this, he would not long remain alive. The anticipation of his joy would kill him. I absolutely love that for this, that if we could fully grasp the inheritance that we have through Christ, everything on this world would just fade away. If you could compare the inheritance that you get if you were Bill Gates' son, it would be pennies compared to the people who call themselves Christian, the people who call themselves sons of God. As Martin Luther says, what is the world to him who has heaven? And it's nothing. So dwell on that. Think about that. I love this verse. I love this section. I hope you guys have a blessed week. It was a pleasure to get to talk to you. Thanks to your love.